So in primary, it's unusual to have maths specialists or people who have a bit of knowledge about maths. And it's actually more common to find people who are a bit scared of maths because most of the people I teach with, they're not all of, but most of them are English, and English people tend to be a bit scared of maths. So these are just 10 things which I thought that I would put together, just some ideas. It's a nice thing, simple thing to do. Things which I've found in my teaching, which I hope that you will find useful as well. You'll probably have 10 of your own things. These may or may not help you. What I'm going to start off with is just some general observations. So these are things that, as a maths teacher, if somebody had told me this in the first year or two of me teaching maths, it would have been really useful. Because I trained as a PGCE student, as many people do, and really that's a big introduction, and then suddenly you're learning on the job. There's lots of information to learn, as we know, those people who teach. Even if you've done a BA, you still don't get a lot of focus. I think those first few years of teaching are pretty important. The things which I've really learnt, and these are my kind of 3 to start with, just general observations about primary school maths. Again, what we're really looking in maths generally is making difficult things easy and trying to simplify things for children so that they can begin to understand that that's what maths does. Maths makes difficult things easy. So if you think about the way which we teach children, we're teaching them to find patterns in things, to try and start to make sense of the world. How do certain things join together? How do they link? And the more we do that in primary school maths, the more you get children to see maths is not just a race to get the answer, which is too much what happens in primary school in my experience, that it is about finding those patterns. It's also about just making connections across different areas of maths. Once you've learned one part of maths, and another part of maths, you can start to see that the two link. Once you understand times tables, division, and how numbers work in that way, you begin to understand fractions because they all link in together. So it's making those connections and really saying to primary school teachers, think about that. You're trying to take difficult things, you're trying to find patterns, make connections, and make things easier. Now, there are a number of things, again, about that, one of which is just focusing on simple things, which, again, I wish people had said to me. Fluency matters a great deal. So fluency, the ability to recall key information quickly, almost without thought, is such a key thing. And if you can't do that, to have a way of quickly finding the information that you need through your understanding of the connections and the patterns which you're beginning to see in maths. Again, looking at those kinds of things. Things like, again, just understanding, whole numbers. And the fact that whole numbers aren't holes in the ground, which when you're 6 is quite odd. And the fact that whole numbers can be broken apart, and that's quite unusual. And I always think about building blocks of maths, those really key things that you need to understand in primary school maths. So times tables, number bonds, place value. Being able to double and halve things, and how crucial that is as a skill in a primary school child, and how often children get through to the top end of primary school and don't have that as an embedded skill. They're not fluent in doubling and halving, and it's a key thing. Rounding, and understanding what rounding is and why we do it and what the purpose of it. Not just how to do it, not just, it's 5 upwards, but why and why that might be useful. So again, I think it's just generally about making the difficult easy. And again, as a message to teachers, I would look at that. The thing which I also have realised, having talked to lots of secondary school teachers, which I get to do now, for 10 years I taught in a primary school and I never talked to a secondary school teacher. I kept wanting to, well, I lie. The only secondary school teachers I spoke to were those I met at parties or friends of mine. And I'd say, well, what do you do? How does it work? Because it's so totally different to everything that I can see in primary. Luckily now we have wonderful ways of getting in connection with people. So I use Twitter a lot. Who uses Twitter here? I'm glad to see. Excellent. Who has seen me writing on Twitter? Oh, 2 of you. Good, great, okay. But yeah, I use Twitter a lot, and I can talk to secondary school teachers now and ask them questions. It's great. Anyway, now my understanding, and this is the thing which I think secondary schools really want, teachers want people to have the basics, and this is my strong suggestion, and those basics are the things like the times tables. And as much as I know that it's frustrating when you have children who turn up in year 7 and don't know their times tables, that's exactly the same in year 3 and they don't know them, and in year 4, and in year 5, and in year 6. And all primary school teachers will tell you the same thing. It's not that the children haven't been taught them. We've really tried to teach them, but they haven't learned. We could do it more efficiently, but we're trying to teach them those things. So secondary school teachers want people to have number bonds, times tables. Again, standard algorithms, we're doing more of that now. And I have to say, I'm very pleased that we're finally doing standard algorithms, because as much as they are a pain, and because all of the issues around them, the fact that as soon as children learn a standard algorithm, they just leech onto it and won't do anything else. But again, working around that, it is a useful thing that we now have that strong focus on standard algorithms. And then also maths vocabulary as well, which is another big thing, which I think, again, that's what secondary school teachers want, and that we in primary school have this, it's really vital that we explore it. because, again, it's very easy as a primary school teacher to assume that children know what all these words mean. My favourite one is the difference. What's the difference between these two numbers? That one's bigger because it's got bigger letters. No, the difference is not. So I keep saying to these children, the difference is a number, and they have to begin to understand that. And it's extraordinary how many children get through to year 4, 5, 6 without understanding that vocabulary. So again, looking at that, saying, just helping children to learn the words that they need to use so they can talk about the maths which they're using. The next one is, this is my general observation. Again, this is partly because I think because I'm a mathematician through education, and I use this a lot. Accuracy, beauty, and clarity. And every time I teach children this, it's great. They always say, beauty? What are you talking about? That makes no sense to me. What do you mean maths is beautiful? And then you say to them, maths is beautiful, and it's pretty much a laugh out loud moment for every group of children I've ever taught. Maths is beautiful? No, it's not. It's really hard, or it's really easy, or it's whatever, but it's not beautiful. Yes, it is. Oh, yes, it is. It's really, really beautiful. And that, if you can't begin to see that maths is beautiful, then why would you want to do it? You know, why would you want to add numbers together or do things with numbers or shapes or whatever? That maths has to be a beautiful thing. I'll come back to that because there's a bit more to it than that. But again, accuracy. I'm expecting children to get right answers to stuff because that's kind of what we're doing. So you've got to get the right answer. And clarity is all about being able to clearly express your ideas. And when I use this for children to get them to think about written maths, and that written maths should be clear. I should know what you're trying to do. I should know how you tried to do it. I should know how you checked that what you got was right and that your answer is correct, and focusing on clarity. And I think these things in primary maths are really key, because you don't want the children to get to the stage, as they often do, of being able to get an answer but not to be able to articulate it in a clear way or to write it down clearly. This is something which really frustrates me, the fact that, I was saying this a bit earlier to somebody, that we don't have written maths textbooks where you can just go and read some maths. You know, you can get a book and you can say, right, children, this is a good book. Here's a good book. Look at this. And we're primary school teachers, we do a lot of that. Here's a fantastic example of this. Lovely, look at these adjectives and this, you know, and so on. But we never do that with maths. We never say, look at this amazing maths. And you know, you don't get an example of something and say, look, they've done this and they've done it really clearly and they've got the right answer and it's beautiful. And it's beautiful because it's simple, because they've found a really simple way of solving that problem. Whatever problem it might be, there's always a beautiful way in maths. There might be more than one. But sometimes there are really ugly ways of solving problems. You go all the way around the houses and then eventually you get the problem. But there's a beautiful way of doing it. And we don't show children ugly maths and beautiful maths. And again, I think that these things, it's worth considering on a primary level, because then you give children more of an understanding that there's more to it than just the race.